John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, remains an iconic figure in history. His charm, youth, and magnetic personality made him a beloved leader of the free world. To the public, he seemed invincible, a man of action, strength, and determination, with a future full of promise. However, behind the walls of the White House, Kennedy was fighting a battle that would have taken down most people. His health struggles, including chronic pain, adrenal insufficiency, and a number of other health issues, were carefully concealed from the American public, and even his closest aides and advisors knew little about the severity of his conditions. Kennedy's health issues began in his early years. He was diagnosed with Addison's disease, an autoimmune disorder that affects the adrenal glands, leading to fatigue, muscle weakness, and extreme sensitivity to stress. This condition required him to take daily medication to help regulate his hormones and keep his body functioning normally. It's one of the most significant health conditions Kennedy dealt with, but it wasn't the only one. Chronic back pain, stemming from a childhood of illness and multiple accidents, plagued him for much of his life. By the time he became president, these two conditions would cause constant physical pain that few outside his inner circle would ever know about. To manage his pain, Kennedy became reliant on a cocktail of prescription drugs, many of which were not only dangerous, but also addictive. His team of doctors, who were part of a small circle of people aware of his conditions, provided him with medication to ease the discomfort. However, the drugs didn't just mask the pain, they also dulled his mental acuity and ability to focus, sometimes making him appear distant or detached during important moments. The public never saw the real toll this took on him. On television, he exuded the vitality and strength expected of a leader. But behind the scenes, he was a prisoner of his own body, struggling to keep up appearances while fighting the ravages of illness. The White House remained a place of mystery to those who didn't have access to Kennedy's inner circle. While the president's speeches were sharp and confident, his personal life was fraught with secrecy. Even his closest family members and friends were kept in the dark about the extent of his medical struggles. His brother, Robert Kennedy, and his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, were among the few who knew the truth. Even then, they were only given limited information, ensuring the public never got a glimpse of the man behind the presidential mask. As Kennedy took on the responsibilities of leading a nation, the physical demands of the office only made his health struggles more difficult to manage. The stress of the presidency, with its heavy political and diplomatic duties, exacerbated his already fragile health. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 would be one of the most significant moments of his presidency, but it would also test his physical limits. During this period, Kennedy's doctors administered him various medications to keep him alert and able to function. But they also had to deal with the difficult question of whether he could physically handle such intense situations. Kennedy's energy levels were often unpredictable, and he would frequently collapse in private from exhaustion. Despite this, he pushed on, displaying a strength and determination that belied his deteriorating health. At the same time, his chronic back pain was a constant nagging issue. As president, Kennedy had to attend numerous public events, press conferences, and meetings, all of which required him to maintain a level of public dignity and composure. But every time he stood for an extended period or walked, his back pain flared up. During the famous 1961 inaugural address, Kennedy stood before the nation, delivering one of the most memorable speeches of the 20th century. But behind his stoic face, his body was in excruciating pain, the kind that would have incapacitated most people. What many people didn't know was that Kennedy's back issues were severe enough to require multiple surgeries. However, due to his public status and the desire to keep up appearances, his medical team had to find ways to manage his pain without revealing the extent of the damage. He was known to wear a back brace under his clothes to provide him with some support while performing his duties, but it was a daily struggle. His doctors were often forced to act as though everything was normal, further perpetuating the myth of the perfect, invincible leader. In reality, He was suffering from pain and fatigue that made the daily grind of the presidency nearly unbearable. Despite all of this, Kennedy's public image remained untainted. The White House tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, ensuring that no one outside the close-knit circle of advisors and family knew the full extent of Kennedy's health crisis. His staff and the American public saw a leader who never seemed to falter, who was ready to stand strong for the nation, no matter what. The public never learned of the extent to which John F. Kennedy was medicated during his time in the White House. His health issues were kept under wraps for years, with many of his medications, including painkillers, steroids, and amphetamines, kept secret from the American people. It was well known that Kennedy's doctors had a special relationship with him, one that went beyond the usual duties of a physician. The president's health was managed by a group of doctors who helped him manage his chronic pain, adrenal insufficiency, and depression. They administered a mix of medications, some of which were extremely dangerous and addictive. The cocktail of drugs Kennedy was given included steroids, which were essential for managing his Addison's disease, but also led to mood swings, weight fluctuations, and additional health problems. His doctors also prescribed amphetamines to keep him alert and energized during long days of work, making it easier for him to handle the immense stress of being president. At the same time, Kennedy's doctors also provided him with painkillers to help him cope with his severe back pain. These medications, often taken in large quantities, had the effect of numbing his discomfort while also dulling his mind. For Kennedy, these drugs were a way to keep functioning despite his deteriorating health, but they also came at a cost. His addiction to these medications became more apparent over time, but the public remained unaware. While the American people saw a man who appeared healthy, strong, and capable, the reality was that John F. Kennedy was barely holding it together. His reliance on drugs to manage his pain and keep up his public persona had a severe toll on his overall health. The medications he took to get through the day may have helped him keep going, but they also contributed to the exhaustion and mental fog that clouded his mind. As John F. Kennedy entered the final year of his presidency, the toll his health struggles had taken on him became more apparent, though still largely concealed from the public eye. The months leading up to November 1963 were some of the most intense and politically charged of his career. The pressure of leading the nation during the Cuban Missile Crisis, navigating civil rights challenges, and dealing with escalating tensions in Vietnam had worn him down physically and mentally. Behind the confident, composed public figure that the American people adored, the private man was struggling to keep up with the demands of the presidency, exacerbated by his increasingly poor health. His chronic back pain, a constant companion for years, continued to worsen. The Addison's disease that had plagued him since his youth required him to take steroids daily to function. These medications, while essential for maintaining his energy and stabilizing his adrenal function, had significant side effects, mood swings, weight fluctuations, and even periods of heightened anxiety. Kennedy's physicians, aware of his deteriorating health, worked tirelessly to keep him upright and functional. However, the cocktail of medications they prescribed to keep him active came with serious consequences. His reliance on prescription drugs, painkillers, amphetamines, and steroids, was not just a matter of convenience. It had become a necessity to manage the mounting physical and emotional strain of leading the nation. This dangerous combination of drugs, while providing short-term relief, began to take its toll on his body and mind. His energy levels were unpredictable, and he often found himself battling exhaustion during long hours at work, a battle that few outside his closest inner circle ever knew about. Despite the toll his health issues were taking, Kennedy never allowed them to interfere with his public duties. He continued to maintain his busy schedule, traveling across the country, meeting with world leaders, and delivering speeches that inspired millions. In fact, he often seemed more determined than ever to push through his suffering, even though his physical limitations were becoming more apparent. His back pain, which had been a problem for much of his life, was now so severe that he was often forced to rely on a back brace to maintain his posture during long speeches and meetings. The brace was carefully hidden beneath his suit, but those who were close to him could see the discomfort on his face as he stood for extended periods. The physical toll of Kennedy's presidency was not just limited to his back pain. The Addison's disease, which had originally been diagnosed in his youth, required constant monitoring and medication. The disease itself, an autoimmune disorder that affects the adrenal glands, led to severe fatigue, weakness, and muscle pain. Kennedy's condition required him to take daily doses of cortisol, a hormone that helped regulate the body's response to stress and maintain energy levels. Without it, his body would be unable to cope with the demands of his high-pressure job. But even with the medication, his energy was often low, and he would find himself struggling to stay awake during long meetings or after a demanding speech. Despite all of this, Kennedy was a master of deception, hiding his suffering from the American public. The man who had become the symbol of youthful vigor, hope, and change was secretly battling a body that was slowly but relentlessly failing him. His aides and closest advisors were well aware of the toll his health was taking, but they were also determined to protect the public image of the young, vibrant president who was the face of the nation's optimism. His physicians, who had been treating him for years, worked to ensure that the media never got wind of his serious health problems. They knew that any revelation about Kennedy's condition would undermine the trust the American people had in their leader. But as the summer of 1963 wore on, it became increasingly difficult to keep up the facade. Kennedy's public appearances were becoming more taxing, and he was often seen appearing exhausted or pale. His weight fluctuated, and his once youthful appearance began to show signs of wear. Those who saw him in private knew that he was often physically drained after long days of work, and that the intense pressure of the presidency was beginning to take a toll on his mental health as well. He struggled with feelings of inadequacy and frustration, which he masked with his signature charm and wit. But those close to him knew that he was facing an inner battle that went far beyond the political challenges of the day. In the midst of this, Kennedy's personal life was also beginning to unravel. His marriage to Jacqueline Kennedy, while still strong, was fraught with difficulties. The couple's young children, Caroline and John Jr., provided moments of joy, but the demands of the presidency left little time for family life. Kennedy was frequently away on trips or engrossed in meetings that would stretch late into the night. His family, particularly his wife, Jacqueline, became increasingly concerned about his health and the toll the presidency was taking on him. Despite their worries, Kennedy remained determined to stay in control and maintain the image of a strong, capable leader. Kennedy's doctors, aware of his failing health, continued to monitor his condition closely, but they were also increasingly concerned about the effects of the medication he was taking. The combination of steroids, amphetamines, and painkillers was beginning to take a toll on his body. His mood swings became more pronounced, and his ability to concentrate and focus began to decline. The stress of the presidency, combined with his physical limitations, made it harder for him to keep up with the demands of the job. But despite these struggles, he continued to soldier on, unwilling to admit defeat, unwilling to let the world see how much he was suffering. As the months passed, Kennedy's health continued to deteriorate. The medications that had helped him cope with his physical pain were no longer enough to keep him going. His back pain became more excruciating, and the fatigue from his Addison's disease intensified. He was often seen resting between meetings, his energy reserves completely depleted. And yet, despite these mounting health issues, Kennedy refused to slow down. He continued to push forward, determined to carry out the responsibilities of the office and fulfill the expectations of the American people. It was during this time, in the final months of 1963, that Kennedy's health struggles reached a breaking point. The stress of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the pressure of dealing with the civil rights movement, and the burden of keeping the country on track in the face of mounting global tensions had taken a toll that even the strongest of men would have found difficult to bear. And yet, Kennedy pushed on, never once letting his suffering show in public. On November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy was tragically assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The nation was left in shock, and the world mourned the loss of a leader who had captured their hearts with his charisma, hope, and optimism. But behind the public grief and the outpouring of affection for Kennedy, there remained the hidden truth about his health struggles. In the wake of his assassination, the true extent of his health battles was slowly revealed. His doctors, his family, and those closest to him began to speak out about the toll his physical and mental health had taken on him throughout his presidency. It was clear that Kennedy's time in office had been marked by a series of personal sacrifices, both physical and emotional. The man who had inspired a nation with his vision of hope and change had also been fighting a private war against his own body. Kennedy's legacy is not just one of political achievement and global impact, it is also one of immense personal courage in the face of debilitating health struggles. His battle against illness, though largely hidden from the public, was an integral part of his life and presidency. While the world remembers him as the charismatic, visionary leader who faced down the Cold War and brought the country together, we must also remember the man who fought silently, with grace and determination, to lead the country while struggling with personal health challenges that would have broken many others. In the end, Kennedy's final battle was not just one fought in the corridors of the White House. It was a battle for survival, a battle that would define his legacy in ways that few will ever fully understand. His story, the story of a man who gave everything he had despite the toll it took on his body and mind, is a testament to the power of resilience and the human spirit. The life of John F. Kennedy is often remembered for his visionary leadership, his eloquent speeches, and the optimism he instilled in a generation. However, beneath this public image was a man who battled with severe health issues that would have overwhelmed most people. From the onset of Addison's disease to the chronic back pain that plagued him throughout his life, Kennedy's struggles were concealed from the world, creating a narrative that left out the immense personal sacrifice he made just to fulfill the duties of his office. The White House was not only a place where he made pivotal decisions for the future of America, it was also a sanctuary where Kennedy fought against his body's relentless decline. The medications that allowed him to function, painkillers, steroids, and amphetamines, helped him remain the leader the nation needed, but they also took a toll on his physical and mental well-being. In the end, his public image as the strong, youthful president overshadowed the truth of his health struggles. Kennedy's legacy, therefore, is not just one of political triumphs, but also one of resilience in the face of immense personal suffering. His health battles, though hidden from the public eye, were integral to the man he was. As we remember him today, it's important to honor not just the president, but the human being who fought silently against his own body to serve his country with unwavering dedication.